Hey there, it's Ken Heydrich, Dean of the Pie Academy, author of the book of the same name, and here's the deal. I get a ton of emails and questions in my online classes about the pie making tools and accessories that I like best. So I thought it was time to make a video on the subject and break it all down for you. I mean, one of the great things about pie making is that you don't need a lot of fancy or expensive tools or gadgets. All you need are a few good basics so you can just get on with it and make awesome pies with a minimum of hassle. So, first up on our list is a little tool for combining the dry ingredients and fat, your butter, shortening, or lard, the first step whenever you're making a pie dough by hand. It's called a pastry blender or a pastry cutter or sometimes even a dough blender, but whatever you call it, they're all pretty much the same. It's just a handle with a series of curved blades or wires attached. So how this works is you combine the dry ingredients and fat in a bowl and you toss them all together. Then you push the pastry blender down into the mixture repeatedly until it's more or less evenly combined. Don't go overboard with this. I mean, you want lots of butter pieces that are about the size of peas. Incidentally, these blades are blunt, and I like this type better than the wire ones because the blades are more rigid, so they do a better job of cutting up cold butter. The wire type is always a bit flimsier, and they kind of bend and move all around when they're supposed to be taking care of business. Now, as you work, you're going to find that the dough mixture builds up between the blades, so just push it out when that happens. And by the way, this is a pretty handy tool for making biscuits because they're mixed up the same way. I've got a link to these sweet potato biscuits down below in case they catch your eye. Now, all that said, I rarely use a pastry blender anymore because I prefer using my food processor to mix my pie dough. A food processor does the same job as a pastry blender, just a lot faster and more efficiently. You see how fast this blade spins? And because of that, there are some things you should do and should not do to make really good food processor pastry. I have a separate video all about that in case you're interested, and you can find the link for it in the description box below. By the way, you'll also find links for just about everything I mention in this video. Now, not all food processors are created equal. Some are too small to do a thorough job of mixing the dough, especially if you're making a double batch of dough, enough for a bottom and a top crust. The problem with small processors is that everything can get jammed up in there and your dough just doesn't mix evenly. So if you are in the market for a food processor, one that you'll be using for pie dough, get one with a generous capacity. This Cuisinart 14-cup food processor is my absolute favorite machine. It's got the only two buttons you're going to need, one to turn it on and the other to turn it off, and for pulsing. We do a lot of pulsing when we make food processor pie dough. Now frankly, this thing's not going to win any beauty contests. It's pretty plain and boxy. But it's easy to overlook all that because it's got a powerful motor, a big bowl, and a nice, simple, and easy to clean design. Now let's talk about rolling pins, the third item on our list, because having the right pin can make a world of difference when you roll out your dough. I mean, your rolling pins are as important as the right brushes are for a painter or chisels for a woodworker. I've probably got a dozen pins in different shapes and sizes and materials, but 95% of the time I find myself reaching for just two. My beefy hardwood barrel style pin and my tapered French style pin. The advantage of a good barrel pin is that it's substantial. The weight alone does some of the work for you, so you don't have to press down so hard when you roll. Now you're going to give your rolling pin a real workout for a lot of years, so you want a pin that'll hold up under pressure, literally. So one of the features you definitely want in a rolling pin is a steel rod or an axle that runs the length of the barrel and into the handles. That makes the pin extra sturdy. You also want a pin with ball bearings so it glides smoothly across your dough. Two companies whose pins I really like are J.K. Adams and Fletcher's Mill. You can't go wrong with their barrel pins. You can find these with a 15-inch barrel, but that's bigger than most home bakers need, so I'd opt for the 12-inch barrel. Now, there are many times when a thinner, tapered French-style pin is preferable. One of those times is when you're rolling cold dough straight from the fridge and you need to really apply a good deal of direct pressure to loosen up the dough. The French pin works better in that case because you can really lean into your work. And because the French pin is thicker in the middle and tapered on the ends, you can use that thicker section in the middle there to shape the dough and sort of push it where you want it to go. The other time I like my French pin is when I'm working with small pieces of dough, like when I'm rolling out shells for pot pies or mini pies. Now, there are lots of these French style pins out there, but the one I like best, not surprisingly, is the hardwood pin that's made just for us in New England. It's available in cherry and maple, and we've sold hundreds of them. Now, from pins to pastry brushes, not the sexiest item in our pie making toolkit, but one you should definitely have. I really like these 1 and 1 3/4 inch brushes. You'll use these to brush excess flour off your dough and to apply glazes so your pies bake up all golden brown and gorgeous. It's a good idea to have a couple of each size on hand so you can reach for a clean one mid-production if you need it, instead of slowing down to wash up the one that you're using. My favorites are these natural boar bristle brushes. The bristles are fine and soft and they put down a nice even coat of glaze. Especially when you're using your brushes for egg glazes, wash them as soon as you can so the glaze doesn't harden on the bristles. And don't let them soak in dishwater for more than a few seconds or the wood will expand and eventually the brushes will start falling apart. And by the way, if you have a favorite pie tool, one of these or another one, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear. While you're there, give us a thumbs up if you're finding this video helpful. You might as well subscribe to our channel too. Now, a minute ago, I talked about brushing excess flour off your pastry, right? Well, here's a nifty little item that helps you avoid putting down excess flour to begin with. A flour shaker with a screen top. So if you've ever made a pie, you know that you need to put a little flour on your work area to keep the dough from sticking, right? And you also know that you need a little flour on top of your dough so your pin doesn't stick there. This shaker is the perfect solution. The mesh lid lets you put down just a dusting of flour. When you try to put down a dusting by hand, you inevitably end up using more than you need. Yeah, a little like that. Whenever we hold one of our in-person pie getaways in Vermont or Charleston, South Carolina, we have all this gorgeous and expensive baking equipment at our disposal. But the one thing that everyone goes crazy for are these $8 flour shakers. I mean, go figure. And by the way, if you'd like to know more about our in-person pie getaways that we hold from time to time, there's a link below where you can do that. We'd love to have you at one of them. Next up, pie pans. Now, there are slab pies, mini pies, mason jar lid pies, and lots more pies. But most of the time when we bake a pie, we just need a traditional round pie pan, right? Well, I've got plenty of them. Here's just a few, from glass to ceramic, clay, and metal, you name it. But if the house was on fire, God forbid, and I could only grab one of them on the way out the door, it would be this one, my USA Pan pie pan. Now, I think of this as a performance pan. It's not really a pretty pan, no offense. So I'll often choose something more attractive when I make a special occasion pie. But for everyday pie making, it's absolutely perfect. The thing is rugged as a tank. It's made of aluminized steel, and it has this clever corrugated design that helps with even browning. It's also got a nice wide rim where you can sit the edge of your pie shell when you're shaping it. That wide rim also makes it easier to lift your pie. That's especially important when your pie is hot. And because it's metal, it can go right from the fridge or the freezer and into the oven, like when you're pre-baking a pie shell, without worrying about the pan shattering. Now, the pan has a special stick-resistant coating, and like all USA Pan products, it's made in the good old US of A, and I really like that. Now, quite often when you bake a pie, you'll want to put it on a sheet pan, especially if it's a fruit pie, and there's a chance that it'll bubble over. So if you don't already have a sheet pan to put your pie on, I'd highly recommend getting one. That's number 7 on our list of must-have tools. I really like this one from USA Pan, the folks who make the pie pan. It's got a rim on all 4 sides. That's the feature that distinguishes a sheet pan from a cookie sheet. Cookie sheets are typically rimless on 2 or 3 sides. Those 4 sides really come in handy in case your pie filling cops an attitude and bubbles over and tries to make a run for your oven floor. And by the way, this particular size is what's known as a half sheet pan, and it measures a hair less than 13 by 18 inches. Even if you only want to make a few pies a year, it's perfect for roasting veggies, sheet pan dinners, toasting granola and nuts, making breadcrumbs, and a whole lot more. So you really need one of these. And by the way, with the passage of time, baking sheets will darken the more that they're used. And they'll go from shiny to looking a little stained to all out, well, sort of like this. That's perfectly normal, so please don't waste your time and try to scrub away this natural darkening that occurs. And besides, you've got better things to do, like giving this video a thumbs up and leaving a comment. So thanks. Number 8 on our countdown of my top 9 must-have tools for pie bakers is this, a pastry wheel or a pastry cutter. You can use this little gadget for putting an attractive edge on your hand pies, but most of the time I use it to cut strips of dough for a lattice top pie. See how pretty that looks? I mean, sure, you can use a paring knife for cutting lattice strips, but you're going to dull the blade and maybe scratch up your counter too, so I wouldn't recommend it. A pastry wheel won't do that because the wheel is blunt, not sharp. And by the way, your pastry wheel can do double duty as a ravioli cutter if you make your own pasta. I've had this one for years. It's made by a company called Pastry, but I can't find it anywhere online. However, there are lots of other brands out there, and I'll put one in the links for you. So we've reached number 9 on our list of must-have tools for pie makers. And because I've got more suggestions than I have numbers, number 9 is going to be a lightning round with 5 honorable mentions. You ready? Number 1, a big jar full of dried beans. That's right, you'll need them and a sheet of aluminum foil to weigh down your pie and your tart shells when the recipe says you need a pre-baked shell. Dried beans are a lot cheaper than ceramic pie weights, and you can use them over and over again. If you put them in a pretty jar and tie on a bow, they make a great gift for your favorite pie maker. Number 2, parchment paper. That fruit pie you put on your baking sheet, put a piece of parchment down to catch any spills first. It'll save you a ton of cleanup time. And by the way, buy the sheets that lay flat, not the rolls. Dealing with those rolls, they just kind of all spring back and they're a real hassle. Number 3, a cooling rack with legs. The legs elevate your pie and protects whatever surface you're cooling it on, like this dining room table. More space underneath means better airflow, so your pie is going to cool faster too. Now, I love number 4, this manly multi-purpose pastry fork or blending fork. It's perfect for when you mix your pie dough by hand. I also use it for docking my bottom shell or poking it before I pre-bake it. Finally, number 5, despite our best intentions, accidents do happen, which is why everyone needs an oven liner. My own has saved my bacon more than I care to admit. Anyway, thanks for watching today. If you like this video, you'll probably really like some of the videos I've done about pie pans. I've put those together in a special playlist, so please check those out too. And by all means, if you love pies and pie making, please subscribe to our email newsletter that goes out about once a week. You'll find that link at the top of the links down below. Thank you so much for watching today. It was great to have you here, and we'll catch you again soon.